The courthouse steps of downtown Atlanta were crowded with morning traffic and pedestrians rushing to their cases. Among them was Jasmine Carter, a poised young black woman, confident in her stride and prepared for the day ahead. She was not appearing as a lawyer, but as a citizen summoned for a hearing, one she expected to be routine. However, something felt off the moment she entered the metal detectors. Two uniformed officers watched her with unusual scrutiny. Their eyes lingered, a barely hidden smirk on one of their faces. Jasmine stayed calm, her documents clutched firmly in her hand. She ignored the whispers behind her, walking toward the courtroom with measured steps. As she entered, an officer stepped forward. "Step aside," he commanded. Before she could react, her arms were gripped and cuffs snapped around her wrists. She hadn't resisted, but the officer spoke with mockery, treating her like a criminal rather than a witness. "Do you know why you're being detained?" one asked, his tone dripping with sarcasm. "I have not been informed," Jasmine replied steadily. "I would like to understand the reason for this action." The courtroom, normally a place of law and order, became a stage for public humiliation. Gasps rippled through the audience. Some spectators exchanged uneasy glances. Others looked down in embarrassment. Jasmine felt the sting of injustice, but she did not waver. Her eyes scanned the judge's bench. Behind it, a robe was draped over a chair, forgotten in the morning rush. A spark of audacity ignited within her. As the officers continued their mocking remarks, she reached for the robe and draped it over her shoulders. The room froze. Officers stopped speaking. Whispering filled the gallery. With calm authority, Jasmine addressed the courtroom. "This court deserves fairness, and the truth will be heard." The moment shifted the power in the room. What had begun as a display of humiliation transformed into a statement of courage and control. The officers' smirks vanished, replaced by disbelief. Inside her mind, Jasmine strategized. "They tried to humiliate me. Now I will show that courage and intellect can command respect. The truth will come out, and lies will be exposed." By the end of part 1, Jasmine had asserted her presence in a space that sought to diminish her. She had not raised her voice, but her composure, courage, and quick thinking had flipped the dynamics of the courtroom. With the courtroom's attention on her, Jasmine will expose the officer's misconduct, confront the systemic injustice, and set the stage for the ultimate reversal of power in Part 2. The courtroom was tense. Every eye in the room was fixed on Jasmine Carter, the woman who had just audaciously taken the judge's robe and asserted authority over a space that had attempted to humiliate her. Whispers traveled across the gallery, growing louder by the second, as officers and onlookers tried to process the sudden shift in control. Jasmine's calm demeanor contrasted sharply with the growing confusion around her. The officers who had mocked and cuffed her earlier now stood frozen, unsure how to respond. Their authoritative posture faltered, replaced by hesitation and embarrassment. For the first time, the balance of power in the room had shifted. "This court," Jasmine said, her voice clear and commanding, "will operate with fairness, integrity, and truth. Anything less undermines the justice it is meant to serve." A murmur ran through the courtroom. Some spectators leaned forward, intrigued. Others gasped, astonished at her courage. Even the lawyers exchanged quick, nervous glances, Recognizing the audacity of what had just unfolded, the officers tried to intervene. "Step away from the bench," one shouted. But Jasmine raised her hand, signaling restraint. She did not flinch. Instead, she calmly held her ground, every movement precise, deliberate, and authoritative. Her mind raced as she recalled the details of the harassment she had endured. The mocking tone, the wrongful restraint, the humiliation meant to silence her. But she also remembered the lessons that had guided her life: poise, preparation, and perseverance. This was her moment to turn injustice into accountability. Jasmine signaled to the courtroom clerk, "Please provide a copy of the incident report and all records related to this case," she said. "I would like them presented accurately, without omissions or alterations." The officers' protests grew louder, but the gallery began to support her stance. The spectators, previously passive witnesses, now sensed the tide of justice beginning to turn. Jasmine's voice carried through the room, firm yet measured, as if the walls themselves acknowledged her authority. In the following minutes, she carefully examined the officers' actions, questioning their behavior and challenging inconsistencies in their statements. Each question, each observation she made highlighted the gaps and falsehoods in the narrative they had attempted to construct. Every time an officer faltered under scrutiny, the courtroom leaned further toward her side. "It is not enough to follow orders blindly," Jasmine declared. "We must hold ourselves accountable for the power we wield. Justice is not a privilege. It is a responsibility." As she spoke, her confidence and clarity captivated the audience. The courtroom that had been intended to shame her now became a stage for truth. She presented her evidence with precision. The incorrect reports, the biased statements, and the procedural errors that had allowed officers to overstep their authority. Whispers turned into nods of acknowledgement from some members of the audience. Lawyers exchanged concerned glances. The officers, once smug, now wore expressions of apprehension. Every step Jasmine took was deliberate, every word weighted with authority, reminding the room that courage and intelligence could overcome intimidation. By the end of the session, the officer's arrogance had crumbled. Jasmine had not only defended herself but also exposed systemic flaws in the process that had enabled the harassment. Her audacity had turned humiliation into power, and the courtroom bore witness to a rare, transformative moment of justice. The battle is far from over. In Part 3, Jasmine will take full control of the courtroom, reveal the lies of the officers, and ensure accountability is enforced, delivering a dramatic and unforgettable conclusion. The atmosphere in the courtroom was electric. After the audacious move that saw Jasmine Carter don the judge's robe, a wave of tension and anticipation spread through the gallery. Officers, lawyers, and spectators alike were on edge. For many, the morning had begun with what they assumed would be routine proceedings. By now, it had become a lesson in courage, authority, and truth. Jasmine adjusted the robe over her shoulders, her posture exuding calm and command. Every detail of the room seemed amplified: the polished wood, the muted sunlight streaming through the high windows, and the rustle of papers that punctuated the silence. She was no longer a passive participant. She had claimed her seat at the helm of justice. "Let us begin," she said, her voice steady, resonant with authority. This court will operate on the principles of fairness and accountability. We will address each matter with honesty, transparency, and respect for the law. The officers who had previously restrained and mocked her shifted uncomfortably. Their earlier smugness was replaced by apprehension. Every eye in the room focused on Jasmine, a single figure of determined composure challenging the system that had sought to diminish her. Jasmine began by reviewing the incident from the morning, the officer's behavior, the manner in which she had been restrained, and the misinformation provided to the court. She presented her observations clearly, pointing out procedural errors and highlighting inconsistencies in the officers' reports. Each point she made illuminated the truth and exposed the attempts at intimidation and misconduct. Authority is not granted by uniform or position alone, she stated. It is earned through integrity, accountability, and respect for those we serve. When power is abused, justice suffers, and society loses faith in its institutions. The audience reacted. Some whispered affirmations, while others leaned forward, captivated by the clarity and courage in her delivery. Jasmine's calm confidence became contagious. The courtroom began to recognize the disparity between rank and righteousness. Her next move was decisive. Jasmine requested official records, eyewitness statements, and the chain of custody for the reports submitted by the officers. She scrutinized each document meticulously, connecting discrepancies and demonstrating how false narratives had been constructed to mask misconduct. These records show that the actions taken against me were neither justified nor lawful, she declared. They were designed to humiliate, silence, and intimidate. This court will no longer tolerate such behavior. Gasps filled the gallery. The officers shifted uneasily, realizing that their previous sense of control had evaporated. Lawyers consulted their notes nervously, attempting to regain some semblance of order. But Jasmine's composure, evidence, and unshakable resolve left little room for counterarguments. The courtroom clerk, initially hesitant, now complied fully with her requests, producing documents that further corroborated her claims. With each piece of evidence presented, the room felt the weight of truth prevailing over arrogance and abuse. Jasmine then addressed the audience directly, not as a witness, but as a voice of justice. Injustice can happen to anyone, but courage, preparation, and integrity can turn the tide. Today, we hold those accountable who abused the power entrusted to them. The shift was undeniable. Officers who had smirked earlier now avoided eye contact. Spectators whispered praise under their breath. The courtroom that had intended to humiliate Jasmine had become the stage for a lesson in accountability and empowerment. Finally, Jasmine took a deep breath and delivered her closing statement. Let this moment serve as a reminder. Authority carries responsibility, and truth is not silenced by intimidation. Justice belongs to those who demand it with courage and clarity. By the end of the session, the impact was clear. The officers faced scrutiny for their misconduct. Policies were reviewed. Witnesses testified truthfully. And Jasmine, once a target of humiliation, had turned the tables entirely, commanding respect and securing justice not only for herself but for the principle of integrity in the courtroom. As she removed the robe and handed it back, the room remained quiet, reflective. Jasmine's triumph was not in vengeance, but in exposing lies, asserting authority, and championing justice. Spectators left with a sense of awe, officers with a lesson in humility, and the narrative of the day etched in history as a testament to courage and perseverance.